Here now is Lisa Bell and Candace Campos with Florida Foodie. Sponsored by Light Orlando, delivering hope together.
Hello and welcome back to Florida Foodie. I'm Candace Campos.
And I'm Lisa Bell. Today's guest is a U.S. Army Special Forces veteran with 20 years of service under his belt. Now he runs a coffee company and a cigar company aimed at helping first responders.
So we are so happy to be joined today by Brent Tucker, who is from a First Responder Coffee Company, or also known as FRCC. And that's what you guys always call it on social. You're like, thanks for supporting FRCC is what you always say.
First Responders Coffee. It's a lot of letters. So
Yes.
we just shortened it FRCC for everyone.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your background, because obviously you have this coffee company now that's focused on first responders, but you've served in the military. Tell us how you got started with that.
So I'm a Floridian. I'm a local boy. In fact, I'm a 9th generation Floridian. We've been here a long time. and when 9/11 hit, I joined the military. Had no intentions to join the military, but 9/11 hit. I was in the military on 9/27/01, as fast as they'd let me in. And I really only intended to do a quick 4 years, come back to Central Florida and work in the family business. But life had other plans. I eventually, tried out to be a Green Beret. I made it. I spent 8 years as a Green Beret, tours of combat back and forth. And then I had a decision to make to stay in the military or get out at the 10-year mark. And I decided, well, I'll try. I got through Special Forces selection. Let me see if I can squeeze through one more. I went to Delta Force selection. I got picked up. And 10 years later, that rounded out a career, 13 combat rotations and many other rotations or shorter missions back and forth. And when I retired from the military, I had to figure out what it is I wanted to do when I grew up. So I started training SWAT teams and police officers just randomly. I'd get these random requests from other friends that were training saying, hey, would you come out and help? So I started, that's how I really got into the first responder realm, by going out there, training with them, seeing the things they dealt with. And it was a lot to see coming from my world, where I had all the resources that I want. Everybody, generally speaking, supported my service. And you get put in this situation where you see them, that their communities rely on them, need them, and they don't have nearly enough resources that they need. Not everyone appreciates what they do until they really need them. I always wanted to start a business, so I had the idea, hey, let's create something that puts the force of this business behind and for first responders, and that's the birth of First Responders Coffee Company.
And why coffee? What is it? What is it about coffee that?
I saw those guys drinking a ton of coffee and giving me a ton of coffee, and I just said, although the coffee is kind of a saturated business, I felt like there was an opening in that realm for coffee. There really wasn't a coffee company aimed just at first responders. So I said, obviously, I need a product that they use, that they'll identify with. From a business standpoint, it's a consumable, so it's not like I just get to sell it to them once. Hopefully they continue to reorder it, and obviously not just them. It's targeted towards first responders, their family, their friends, first responders, supporters in general, which really take up the lion's share of our customer base.
And it's not just a product that first responders might enjoy to consume, but you're also raising money by selling this for first responders.
Absolutely. We are a for-profit business. We're not a not-for-profit, but the intention was always to use this to raise money for first responders. And we're super proud of what we've done to date. We opened in November of last year, and we've already donated over $20,000 to first responder causes. From everything from into watch donations, injured officer donations. In fact, our last one was a check to an injured EMT paramedic that rode in an ambulance in New York City, and as she was caring for this victim, who was a criminal, wakes up, stabs her 3 times in the back of the ambulance, and now she's in a fight for her life. So we sent her a bunch of coffee, a bunch of shirts, sent her a check that said, hey, this is for you, which they always have a problem spending money on themselves. Say this is for you to do something, you know, that you wouldn't normally do for yourself. Go out, buy a $200 steak and an expensive bottle of wine. Go jump out of an airplane. I always send them a handwritten letter because I've been shot before and injured in the line of duty, had to go through the rehab process. So I know what that's like. And so every one of those that go out, I also send a handwritten letter of encouragement from someone who's been there.
And there's a big mental health aspect to this as well, because you were also saying, you know, you're a first responder, getting together with first responders over potentially a cup of coffee. Why is the mental health conversation so important? I mean, from military, from local?
It is. In one aspect, I wanted to do it because I wanted to do it differently, because I feel like it's a buzzword that a lot of people use. They say, you know, mental health, but there's a lot of people out there talking about mental health and with good intentions, but they've never been through it. So they're telling people from what they know or what they've read. You know, they're trying their best to try to, you know, do the academics solution to PTSD and stress, and I think it resonates better from someone who's actually been there, gone through it, has handled it, and gets to tell you from experience, I know what you're going through. I've done it right, I've done it wrong, and I've done it right. I've been on both sides of it, and it really resonates with them. So I enjoy doing that.
Well, we love what you're doing. It's, you know, coffee with a purpose to the nth degree. You mentioned earlier that the coffee market is already saturated, but no one's doing quite what you're doing. And we see some coffee that you brought here today. In front of me, which I appreciate, is the pecan flavored bourbon infused coffee. But tell us exactly what you have, and if you're trying your coffee, what sets it apart from other coffees on the market.
Yep, absolutely. So we do something that most companies do not do, and we use 100% Brazilian Arabica beans. So it's not a mixture, it's not Colombian, it's not Colombian and Brazilian, it's 100% Brazilian. And I'll tell you the important why that matters. Brazilian coffee is low in acidity. It's just their soil just naturally has a lower in acidity content to it. That transferred to the beans, and even all the way through the roasting, the grinding, and into the packaging process, it gives you a lower in acidity coffee. So it has health benefits from one aspect, but that lower acidity also comes through in the flavor. You get a full flavor from it, but you don't get a bitter coffee aftertaste.
Nice.
So we get it all the time. You know, we go to conferences, we hand out samples, and you know, people walk around sipping our coffee, and then happens all the time. They'll make their way all the way back to us, and they'll say, I just want to let you know, this is a really good cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And it's always nice to hear, but sometimes they're so surprised. I don't know, like, well, what did you think? What were you expecting? Were you expecting it to be back? It's not just a gimmick of, you know, first responders tug at your heart, and now you have to drink bad coffee if you want to support first responders. So we put good coffee in it, you know, with a good cause and purpose, and we really think, you know, putting the extra dollars into a good product is what's going to continue to help separate us from everyone else.
Still ahead on Florida Foodie, we learn names behind the faces on those coffee labels and why Brent Tucker decided to enlist his brand into the cigar market.
I've always enjoyed cigars, and that got brought up, and I thought for a second, I was like, well, that's actually a really good idea. Let's stop for that. You know, so let's talk about that for a second, because I selfishly want to smoke cigars.
What he says prepared him for running a business after 20 years in the military. Florida Foodie is back with Brent Tucker, a 20-year veteran of the armed forces who launched a coffee brand aimed at supporting first responders.
So where does this roasting process take place? I know you have a footprint in Longwood in Central Florida, but tell us how the process actually works.
Yep, our roaster is out of Orlando, so it's a completely Central Florida process. Our roaster's in Orlando. He ships it over to Longwood, our warehouse, in whole bean form. So you know, we have the whole beans roasted, light roast, medium roast, dark roast in our warehouse, and then from there, we sell whole bean bags, we sell ground coffee. It either goes to the grinder or goes whole bean, and then depending on the bag that they picked, goes into the bag, gets sealed, gets shipped, all from our warehouse.
And you have the warehouse there, but it's not a storefront. So you guys, where can we find your coffee?
Yep. So online is primarily where our sales come from, which is frccoffee.com. We're an online retailer. But that being said, we have a wholesale side of the business that is continuing to grow. Ace Hardware stepped up and allowed us into 6 or 8 of their stores throughout Central Florida. We're in a couple of random gun shops all the way from here in Central Florida all the way down to Jupiter, Florida. And we're also into some training facilities all over the United States that train first responders and carries our coffee.
Tell us the different flavors that you brought today, and do these rotate regularly, or do you always have these? How does that work?
So this is what's unique about our packaging. And we have more than this. I didn't want to bring 8, 10
How many do you have? Yeah.
I'll tell you about all of our different packaging. I'll tell you, we'll take this off just for a second. These 3 bags here are actually all the same coffee. Okay. So I believe they're all medium roast. So so they're all the same coffee. How we do it is depending on the theme of the bag is where the contribution goes. So I didn't want make it up. 90% of our customer base to be firefighters, and then give away 90% of our charities to police officers. Just didn't seem like that would be fair. So the theme of the bag is where the contribution goes, and some of the bags have very specific contributions to them. And we'll take another Florida story here, which is the sheriff bag. As you can see, it has Mike Milmerstad's name on it, which is an Orange County SWAT deputy that lost his life, and even has a personal touch on it. Up there it says "Earn the Day." That was his personal motto that kept him going. He'd show up to work ready to go, trained, in shape, focused every day off that motto. So we put that on the bag, and any of the contributions that come in from this one, including the K-Cup boxes, go right to the Milmerstad family, direct donations. Besides these, we also have a canine line that goes to Canines United out of Jacksonville, Florida, a nonprofit. We have a nurse bag that goes to the American Nurses Foundation. I think that rounds out our bag line.
And you were telling us on the firefighter one, this is actually a Seminole County firefighter.
Yeah, even the people on the bag. This is a Seminole County firefighter. This is an Orlando police officer on this
Tell us
bag.
about their stories.
The firefighter is Mike Gagliano. I actually went to high school with him. He was my best friend in high school, and we've stayed in touch ever since. I went out and did 20 years in the military, came back. He went to be a firefighter, and he's still a firefighter. He's a lieutenant at the Seminole County Fire Department, and still on the job and continuing to work. It's important to me to have actual first responders in their actual gear, because if you put a military person on a bag that was a fake, I'd look at their equipment and be like, that's not right.
My husband does that all the time. He'll be like,
her husband who's a first responder.
Yes, who's a firefighter in Orange County, but it's interesting how they do look for almost
you can tell.
And they know. And as soon as it's fake, it turns them off. They're like, that's they're an imposter, So it was very important to us to have actual first responders, and as a Florida company to have, if we could help it, Florida and Central Florida, specifically first responders, which we were able to do.
We also see FRCC, which started out as First Responders Coffee Company, but on your hat we now see First Responders Cigar Company. You have some cigars here.
We do.
Let's bring those in so people can see those. So how did this come about, and tell us, how you're selling these and where that money is going?
And we had the idea of, hey, is there something, let's just think outside the box. Is there something else that we could, another market, kind of like coffee, that we can get into that no one else is in? And I've always enjoyed cigars, and that got brought up, and I thought for a second, I was like, well, that's actually a really good idea. Let's stop for that. Let's talk about that for a second, because I selfishly want to smoke cigars. And as we went down that road, as if coffee does have its competitors. There's the Black Rifles out there. As we're into this space, there is fire department coffee. There is Blue Line Roasting. There are competitors. And as we look down this, the market's just absolutely wide open in the cigar market, and there's a lot of first responders and first responder supporters and retired first responders that smoke cigars, and there's not a single competitor like that in coffee that we mentioned in cigars. So even though we thought it was a little more of a niche market, we thought the opening was wide open.
Makes sense.
And we went for it, and the results of our first month couldn't be any better.
Wow.
If it continues, even though we've been in the coffee market which isn't a long time, almost a year, the cigar market may outpace our coffee sales by next month, because it's so unique, and it's, there's no one else competing in that space.
I mean, talk about a 180, going from a Green Beret to selling coffee and cigars. Tell us about, just the difference in your life from 10, 15 years ago to today.
How was that shift? Because,
Right.
I mean,
Yes.
it's a big shift.
I think, and some people have a problem, getting on the military, especially in the special operations community, where you get addicted to that rush, you get addicted to the missions. I again have to, talk about all my accolades and everywhere I've been and done, but when I was at my 20-year mark, I felt complete. I said this. When Syria kicked off, and I went back and forth to Syria for a while, between Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, I just came home one day. I was like, you know what? I knew I would know, when this book is done, and figuratively speaking, I'm not writing a book.
I was like, oh, I didn't know about a book.
And
That's going to be your next chapter.
maybe.
No pun intended. Yeah.
And so the separation part of it, to me was just a natural progression of my life. I felt like it was time. I moved on. I always knew I wanted to be a small business owner, because I grew up as in a family business. My dad was a small business owner, and he took that from my grandfather. So I knew I wanted to start something. I have 4 kids that hopefully I can provide for my kids. 3 of them are girls. I'd love for my 3 little girls to never work for anyone else but their dad.
God bless you, father, 3 girls.
So the business aspect, was a kind of an easy transition, because it's what I wanted to do. And then, ironically enough, the lessons I learned in special operations really carried over into the business.
That's interesting.
A solid work ethic. Having to work 6 days a week, 6.5 days a week, if you want to master your craft. Being able to make a plan, whether it's going into combat or a business plan, setting out a really solid plan where you feel like you've crossed your T's and dotted your I's. And then when you put that plan into action and things aren't going right the way they do in missions, they never go right, identifying what's not going right and then adjusting quickly, but adjusting accordingly. All those life lessons that special operations taught me, I've brought over to business.
It is so interesting to hear you say that, because we have heard so many restaurant owners, and I was about to say that, but I don't want to liken running a restaurant to being a Green Beret or in a Delta Force, because it's night and day.
Like that, yeah.
But a lot of people we have talked to here on Florida Foodie have described operating a restaurant like being in battle. It's like you're in the trenches and your stuff's throwing at you left and right, and you're putting out fires nonstop.
Absolutely. Like I said, we're still in our first year, and that's what I feel like. This whole first year has been nothing but a battle. And I love a challenge.
Yeah.
It's why I love the selection process of being a Green Beret and being in the Q course and proving yourself, and not just thinking that you're good enough to do this, but proving it. And it's really the same way in business. There's a lot of people who say they're going to be a business owner or want to, but it's a whole nother level to go out there, put your life savings into a business, gamble with your own money, and then go out there and have to prove it, every day that, not only was I successful here in the military, but I can be successful in business too, and I love that challenge.
Where can people find you online?
Our website is frccoffee.com. Cigars, which are the same website, is frccigars.com. It makes you feel better about typing in cigars rather than coffee. And we're on Instagram and Facebook at FRC Coffee.
Awesome. Brent, thank you so much for your service, for 20
Absolutely.
years of service. We really do
Yes.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
It was fun.
And
Thank
for doing
you.
such great things for our first responders here, not only in Central Florida, but around the country. So thank you
Amen.
for that.
Absolutely. Glad to do it.
Happy first anniversary.
If you like this episode of Florida Foodie, check out our other interviews right now on News 6 Plus. You can get the story behind dozens of local restaurants and food trucks all free. Just download the News 6 Plus app for your smart TV.